In 2007, I was 23 years old, totally self-made, and worth over $7 million. By 2009, I had absolutely nothing. I had built real estate wealth fast through building, development, had millions of dollars in assets, and I thought I had totally cracked the code. But 23 years in business later, $350 million in personal sales, over 1,600 client transactions, I've seen the good, the bad, and the really ugly from every single angle, including rock bottom in the floor. Today, I'm gonna give you the 10 biggest lessons I learned from losing $7 million so you don't have to learn them the hard way. This isn't theory. I live this, and it applies to any business, not just real estate, not just building, not just development, any industry. Whether you're a new agent or a seasoned entrepreneur, these lessons are going to apply to you right now. So stay with me through all 10. The last few are ones that most people don't even think about unless they've gone through an experience like this, okay? So back in 2007, let's rewind the clock a little bit. It's 2026. It's been a minute since this happened. We were on the edge of the Great Recession starting in 2007. We had subprime mortgage issues going on all across the country. If you were around then, you remember how scary it was. Really, within a matter of about 12 to 15 months, the entire market froze up. And by September 2008, everything was basically on lockdown as far as mortgages go. The secondary mortgage market had completely frozen. While loans could be made and originated, they could not be sold. There was no buyers for these mortgages. And this was a short-term issue, but it created a big backlog and bottleneck in the mortgage business, which ultimately affected the market, of course, because that would, it would impact the flow of selling and buying real estate, and of course, construction development. We had built a construction development empire. We were building 30, 40 houses and condos per year, and we had about 30 projects under construction when this hit. It was a really nasty experience to go through. It was the darkest, most challenging time of my life. But out of this, I learned so much, and when you have a setback like this, whether if it's this large or smaller, either way, you have to really take the time to reflect on it. And you have the option to either choose to learn from it or to pretend like it didn't happen and just move on to the next part of your life. I chose to really reflect on it, and I've done so for a matter of years. And through that, I've learned a lot that I've applied to other businesses that I've owned, including what I do today. Here's the 10 lessons that changed how I operate and what I think that you should consider to make sure that you don't end up in that same position that I ended up in. So number one, manage leverage very carefully. You should embrace leverage, but you should be very tactical with it. I had over $25 million in construction development loans in 2007, 2008. Most of these were cross-collateralized, and most of them had little money down as well. You could do construction loans then with zero money down as long as you had 20% equity in the finished project. If you go back to 2008, you may remember that the FDIC would roll into town, they'd pick an area, and they would shut down a bank or two on Friday afternoon, and Monday morning somebody else would own that bank. It was a very scary time. This had not happened since really the savings and loan crisis, and then also back to the Great Depression, where banks were, getting runs on them and stuff like that. It was wild, absolutely insane that the FDIC was coming and shutting down these banks. But these banks had loaned me a ton of money. And so once these banks were bought and sold, then whoever had bought them basically would come in and they would call all the construction. They didn't want to deal with it. They didn't have to deal with it. They had bought that debt for pennies on the dollar. They just wanted to recollect as much money as they possibly could. So it was a huge problem, right? And so leverage is a tool, but it's not really a strategy unless you've got a lot of thought put into it. So if you use it recklessly, it's a disaster that's waiting to happen. I still see this with builders that I work with today where they over leverage themselves. You can't extend yourself to the point where everything is leveraged and you have no liquidity. Equity is really good. Equity is massive for contributing to your net worth, but liquidity, cash in the bank, really does matter. And this really became obvious to me in 2008. And then later on, reflecting that I had millions in equity and very little cash on hand to deal with the crisis. Okay. So that leads me to number two. Cash is king, and equity without liquidity is merely a trap. Okay. I'm going to say that again. Cash is king. I had, like I said, tons of equity. I had almost no cash. It had dwindled down super fast, and I couldn't convert that equity into liquidity fast enough. Usually the ways that you convert equity and liquidity is by selling assets or by refinancing them. And if you can't sell them and you can't refinance them, you have a very big problem. My general rule of thumb, the way that I coach people, is keep 3 to 6 months of business and personal expenses in reserve. So if it costs your business $50,000 a month to exist, you really should have about $300,000 in business reserves. And that's not including your personal reserves. Say it costs you $10,000 a month to live, you should have another $60,000 set aside personally. No paycheck to paycheck kind of entrepreneur leverage here going on. You've got the liquidity. If you don't have this liquidity, you need to make it a focus point to generate it, and you need to stop spending as much money or investing as much money money until you've got it. Just pump the brakes, build up that liquidity, and then you can start investing again and buying more assets once you've actually got the liquidity bolstered up. But live conservatively when it comes to, personal life. No monster car loans. Like I've got some friends that got like $2,000 or $3,000 a month Lamborghini loans. Don't do that. Keep your overhead low personally, and it's going to pay off massively for you. My wife and I track every dollar we spend. We use the Monarch app for this, and we live on a budget. No matter how much money we make, we still live on a budget. And so many people scale their lifestyle as they have really good months in real estate or in development. Like let's say you made $100,000 in 1 month, which I know plenty of agents that have. Well, automatically, most agents are going to go out, they're going to buy a new car, they're going to buy new clothes, they're going to buy a new house, and they're going to have nothing left that next month. And guess what happens that next month? They usually sell zero. They had a great month, then they had a shitty month, okay? It's this roller coaster income, and you have to average that out. If you have a $100,000 month, you should still have lived on a budget, okay? You shouldn't just go be spending recklessly. So this will pay off massively for you. It's the responsible way to steward the money and the wealth that you are trying to create. That brings me to point number 3. Plan multiple exit strategies. Do not assume that the plan is going to work. The plan may work. Hopefully it works. But what happens if it doesn't? This is where contingencies come in, okay? My only plan back in 2008 was to sell these properties. I had the other option of refinancing them, but ultimately I had to get rid of them in some way, shape, or form. When selling was no longer an option because the market changed so fast, we had nothing to fall back on, right? All of a sudden, there was an 8-month inventory supply of houses, which is wild to think about that. And it went all the way up to 18 months at one point, and you couldn't sell it. Like it just took way too long, and prices started plummeting because of the amount of inventory that was there. So in retrospect, I could have mapped out something like a rent and hold strategy, where maybe I hold onto those properties, refinance them into 30-year mortgages, get a renter in there. I did that on 2 or 3 of them. I just couldn't do it fast enough, but if I would have done it sooner, I probably could have done it with more of them, and then at least been able to pay the mortgages on them. So think through your backup before you need it, not during the crisis. It's really hard when you're excited to think about contingencies, but as a business owner and operator, that's the responsibility that you must have and wear, is when you look at an opportunity, you need to say, what could go wrong here? And when you think what could go wrong, you want to have an optimal exit strategy. Then you want to have 2 or 3 contingency exit strategies as well. Other ways you could get out of what's going on. If you don't have that, you probably shouldn't move forward with whatever you're considering doing or the investment you're thinking about making. Okay. That brings me to number 4 is build multiple income streams that are synergistic and that are not distracting. One income stream is a singular point of failure. And people like to talk about the Great Recession of 2008 as a once in a 100-year event. But I found that once in a 100-year events seem to happen more like every 10 to 15 years. So the odds of this happening again, not super high. Obviously, a lot has changed in the lending regulations and the whole lending atmosphere since then. But nevertheless, something similar could happen again. It's just a fact. It could. Okay. Would it be the same? Would it look the same? No, but it could have a similar impact where inventory goes way up, prices go down, and the market's kind of frozen. That could totally happen. Okay. So other things that I could have done that would have created other income streams and would have gotten me through this. I could have built and held multifamily like duplexes. I could have built and held apartment buildings, just finished them out, rented them, and held on to them. I could have developed real estate for clients, like building them, and earned a commission and fee on building these houses. I could have got my real estate license then instead of using a real estate agent then, and collected commissions on selling homes as well. Those are all ways I could have earned fees without owning the asset, which would have been really huge. I apply this to what I do now, and if I look at it now for my businesses, here's some of my income streams that I currently operate on. I have personal commissions because I still sell real estate. I have a team that also makes money. I have a mortgage joint venture so that when our real estate clients need financing, we can make some extra money and give them a great deal on a mortgage. I make money off of real attraction income by having a revenue share. I make money off of development projects, off of building my own properties, and off of coaching and courses for agents. So there's like all of these synergistic income streams that tie back into real estate in some way, shape, or form. You'll notice that I'm not just like selling some kind of random product that doesn't align with real estate. Everything is back to real estate in some way, shape, or form, whether it's mortgages, development, coaching agents, courses for agents, attracting agents, whatever it is, it's all back to real estate. So the key question for you, and that I really want you to think about, is what synergistic income can you add that works with your core business and not against it? When people think about distraction, they don't realize it's such a big opportunity cost. So I don't want you to be distracted. I want you to think, what could you do that's actually going to synergize with the efforts you're already putting in, but that would create more additional income? That gets me to number 5. Develop a brand and not just a product. You have to own mind share in your market. When you're a brand, people think of you first before they even start looking. I want you to think about products that people have really associated with things that they are doing. If you think about Uber, I'm not calling a taxi, I'm calling an Uber. That's literally what people call it now because Uber has that kind of mind share. DoorDash. I'm not ordering takeout or delivery. I'm ordering DoorDash. Google. I'm not searching on the internet. I'm going to go Google something. Okay. So they have become the verb, not just the service. And this is really huge. Like this is owning mindshare at the largest degree possible. And you don't have to do it to that level, but I want you to understand what these companies are doing and then mimic some of that in your local market. If you're a real estate agent or a plumber or whatever you're doing, you need to own that mindshare space in your market, just like these companies have done nationwide. So that requires being omnipresent. That's super important. Omnipresent means that you're everywhere that people go. You should be on Instagram. You should be on YouTube. You should be on Facebook. You should be on TikTok. You should be on Google search. Like you need to be everywhere these people go and following them around digitally online through your ad presence and your content presence. You also need to create an experience that's so far above your competition that clients can't help but talk about you within their circle, their friendship circle, their family circle. All they can do is bring you up and how positive their experience has been with you, because that's going to bring you so much repeat and referral business, which is like the backbone of a really strong, healthy revenue stream. That gets me number 6. Systematize everything. This is a consistency issue, and consistency is a system. It's not luck. Okay. I want you to map out your entire client journey, every single milestone from the first contact with the client to a closed transaction. Okay. To give you an example of what this looks like in real estate, here's some stages or milestones that I would map out. Appointment set, appointment met, listing signed, pre-listing, active, pending, closed. These are all different milestones along the way of this seller journey that a seller is going to go on. And I need to map out what is the ideal experience and outcome at each one of these phases. I need to map it out for my internal team so my team knows what are the standard operating procedures at each one of these phases for my clients and for you as the teammate, like what are your responsibilities? But then for the client needs to understand what does this roadmap look like as well? What's the next step at each one of these stages that they need to be aware of? Okay. And you should map that out for them. You should be able to explain it to them in very clear, simple language they understand, give them some sort of visual, and then remind them of it as it comes up. Okay. So just define what happens at each stage, both internally and for the client. You need to sit down, you need to map this out on paper. It can't be in your head. It's got to be on paper. What is this client journey? There's a tool called Miro, M-I-R-O. It's great for mapping things like this out. But without systems, what you're going to have is one client that gets a 10 out of 10 experience, and the next one gets a 5 out of 10 experience. It's wildly inconsistent when you don't have a system and process for everything that you do. This is where radical consistency comes in, and where every single client gets the same experience. That's how you start building up repeat referral business that's going to change the game for your business. Okay. Number 7, read market shifts and get ahead of the pivot. Data is going to tell you the story early. I'm going to say that again. Read market shifts and get ahead of the pivot. Okay. You need to figure out what data in your industry tells you what's really going on. If you're just looking at your client acquisition rate, that's not telling you enough. You need to zoom out and see what's going on in the larger industry, in the larger market of the industry that you're in. Real estate and mortgage are extremely cyclical. There's wild swings within our industries. Okay. There is really no norm. The markets go up, the markets go down. Everyone always asks us like, how's the market doing? Because they know the market is wildly dynamic in these industries. But things that I watch is, for real estate, home sales versus the prior year. Is it up or is it down? The months of inventory supply. Is it up or is it down? The months of inventory supply tells me which direction the price is likely going to go. It's kind of that crystal ball on pricing. The average sales price. Is it up or is it down? And then mortgage rates. Are mortgage rates going up? Are they going down? How do they compare to the same time last year? But each one of these data points tells you a story on where the market is going. Okay. But your job is to listen and look at this data and then interpret it to make sure you're positioning your team and your clients to ultimately win in any market. Great businesses actually radically expand when markets go down. They grab market share because other businesses go out of business because they didn't do this step. They didn't do the planning. They didn't look at the data. They don't have the insights. They weren't ahead of it like you were, and they go out of business. That's where companies like yours and mine jump in, grab market share and grab mind share. And when markets then grow and expand in the future, when it becomes positive again, that's when really fun things happen. That's when massive wealth is built. Gets me number 8. Don't run from hard conversations. The delay costs more than the discomfort. And I'm talking mostly about your internal team. I've seen business owners hold unaffordable staff for too long, where like the company has shifted, revenue is way down. I've seen the companies go down like $100,000 a month. They don't adjust their overhead at all. That's a really big problem. And I've seen this literally take out the entire company before. Like the owner wouldn't make the hard call to lay off some staff, and the net effect was all the staff got laid off because the company went out of business. The same goes for any expenses isn't justified. You have to cut expenses when things are going down. Like you can't just sit there and think that things are going to get better. You should be looking at your P&L every single month, if not every single week, and then adjusting your expenses based off of what's actually coming in the door and what all that data in that last step is telling you about where the market's going. If the market is contracting and it's getting smaller and the cash flow is already being pinched, you need to be proactively making moves now and not waiting or hoping that things just magically change. They won't magically change. What's going to change is you making hard decisions, having hard conversations before it impacts your entire organization. I would rather have hard conversations, lay off 2 or 3 people, which is heartbreaking, but is a hard decision a business owner is going to have to make, than have to lay off every single person because I was too much of a wimp to have that hard conversation when it needed to happen. But strong leaders, they make the call early and they don't wait until there's no other option. They don't wait until their back is up against a wall or around a corner. They make that call super early on because they know it's the right thing to do and it's going to save the whole rest of the organization, allow the rest of the organization to thrive. That gets me number 9. Learn from your mistakes. Failure is a teacher, but only if you're listening. Some people own their losses, they reflect from them, and they grow from them. The others deflect them, they run from it, and they end up ultimately repeating it. It's like this circular loop where just the same thing ends up happening in their lives. And after every setback, really smart people, the people that can actually put their ego aside, that had a failure, they look at it and they say, what happened? Where did I miss? What could I have done differently? And if you do that and you actually take the time to reflect on it, then you can change your behaviors, you can change your habits, you can change your decision making so that when that same situation comes up again, you can position your organization to be better. This is how you don't end up living in that same spot twice. But it's absolutely wild. I've seen so many people just repeat the same bad destructive habits, both in their business life and their personal life, and they never see that this is just like a repeating circular event that happens because their decision making doesn't change. Decision making changes when reflection occurs. That gets me number 10. Don't let fear of failure stop you from taking risks. Taking calculated risks is part of the job of being an entrepreneur, okay? Owning a business is inherently risky. That's just part of what you're accepting when you become a business owner. It's just part of what you're going to have to deal with. There's a lot of ways that you can mitigate your risk, especially if you follow some of the rules that I just gave you today. But ultimately, you're going to have to realize that taking risk is part of the game. And if you don't take any risks, you're not going to grow and you're not going to break through to that next level, okay? You're going to see very stagnant. I've made that mistake as well. Not taking any risks is not a good way to be in business either. These 10 lessons are ways to reduce that unnecessary risk though. But if you never take any risk at all, you're not going to grow at all. So be calculated, be smart, but don't be paralyzed and afraid to take action when your gut instinct and all the data tells you it's time to go. So look, I lost $7 million. It's not a story I love telling, but I've rebuilt from zero. And everything I just shared with you is why I didn't make the same mistakes twice. If you're a real estate agent that wants to build something that doesn't depend on one market, one income stream, or one lucky year, that's exactly what we help people do. We've got courses, we've got mentorship programs, and we're building a network of agents at Real Brokerage across the entire country that are serious about creating real wealth, not just commissions. So there's links down below. If anything this hits home, hit subscribe. I put out content every single week. Most coaches would charge you for, okay? I'll see you on the next one next week.